Today, when I'm making this video, it's the 31st of March, which means that tournament I will be partly reviewing and mentioning is not finished yet. I am making this video in the hope that my team is going to win this competition, so when I publish the video, nobody will be allowed to say that I am making this video because I'm salty. Anyways, if you are watching it right now, it most likely takes place in the middle of April, right after Power Rangers won the Drop Zone Masters final. So, I've been playing Battlefront tournaments since March 2016. I played in over 40 of them. Some were better, some were worse, some of them deserved dedicated videos, some of them were that bad that I preferred to erase them from my memory. But all those experiences combined probably give me a permission to provide an honest and reliable review of another competition. So, during World Cup 2021, I encountered a very unique situation, which was, it honestly never happened to me before, even though I possibly organized around 30 tournaments. There were a lot of complaints about Russian national team being inactive and not available for matches. However, I proved all those grievances to be incorrect, because once I messaged every Russian member about match on the day after, they all arrived. The match was played without any difficulties, which means the problem was not inside the team activity, but rather someone responsible for their organization. My thoughts were proved correct on the last weekend of so-called little playoffs, when Russia was supposed to encounter Czech Republic in the 17th place decider. This was the first time I was not fulfilling duties of Russian captain. I organized the best streamer, best casting duo, solid amount of spectators. However, like I previously mentioned, this time I wasn't responsible for organizing the Russian squad. The only Russian player who arrived online for that match was Igor, who was incredibly surprised that nobody else was there. But to everyone else's surprise, it turned out that the actual Russian captain did not inform any single member of his team about the match. For the last 5 years, I have seen thousands of difficulties with the roosters, but team captain not informing his team about the match was by far the most ridiculous shit I have ever seen. He wasted my time, he wasted Brogly's time, who was so pissed that he suspended his streamer career for a while. He wasted time of the entire Czech team, and finally wasted time of maybe around 20 people who actually wanted to watch the show. So, the subjective part of World Cup summary, where I mention Igor as the worst captain of the tournament, is not accidental but truly deserved. Not much later, Igor received New Order approval to take the lead over Drop Zone Masters tournament. If I said this was a little irresponsible decision, it's just like if I said that dropping nuclear bomb on Hiroshima was not very nice. Out of around 200 people actively participating in the community, they chose a person who was not smart enough to inform his team about World Cup match. This was truly excellent pick, and it did not take too long to wait for its first effects. I belong to a very small group of people who always read the rules before the registration. My favorite is the statement about creating parody. It should be probably redirected to inform potential participants about the possibility that the competition will soon turn into a tournament parody, especially after taking a short look at the organizer list. Anyways, this was the last funny part. Rest for me is just set. Rule number 2 mentions power rankers, which are the worst element of tournaments invented in early 2020. Although to some of you it may seem that the power rankers make the tournament, here goes my favorite word, balanced, more exciting and hype providing, I will prove you it is the exact opposite, but I'll do that later. Rule number 5 is another ridiculous thing, and I have no idea why nobody ever attempted to criticize it, but since nobody is doing that, I will. So-called substitutions were always a thing. However, in the past, far more rare than nowadays, mainly because New Order taught the new generation of players that subs are cool and normal thing. For example, by limiting roosters to a very small amount of players, and many more. Subs used to be a good thing, because they always had to be approved by the opponent. Usually nobody had problems with that. But now, subs are a problem, because after refusing certain players, the organizer has right to enforce you to play against a fair sub based on his own opinion. This is why both rule number 2 and 5, which are somehow next to each other, should never be there. Tournament organizer has no right to interfere into the match or tournament itself with anything which is based on his own opinion. The possibility of personal opinion having influence on the tournament will always lead to a disaster, because at this point it just becomes illegal smurfing, which was always so much criticized by the New Order. Rule number 11 also requires some inspection, but I'll get to that later. Rule number 13 is absolute tournament killer, and I'm surprised that after organizing over 5 tournaments, the New Order staff still haven't learned that. This is the third rule in this tournament where personal opinion of the organizer interferes into your team. First one was the ridiculous power rankers, second was the sub approval. Now you have another situation where the organizer can determine who can play for your team and who cannot. If this served a good purpose, then perhaps I would close my eye on that, but I know how it looks like in details, and I'll get back to it very soon. The rest of the rule set has been just copied over and over for 5 years, so it doesn't really matter. However, getting back to the tournament. At the beginning, the registration section of this tournament allowed registering up to 8 players, which was actually a perfect size, so I just assumed that the information about 6 in the rule set is a mistake, and I registered my full team. That was the moment for a classic. I hate when people destroy their own competitions just because of own ignorance and stupidity. I really believe that Bram's or Darwald's presence on Power Rangers roster would not hurt anyone. However, Park and Igor thought otherwise. Apparently, this would be very destructive for the competition and could not be allowed at all costs. Finally, we all know that subs are a must in the modern community. After we attempted with approximately 5 registrations, where none of those broke any rules, finally one got accepted, but Park changed every registered nickname into his liking. I do not know if Power Rangers colors, which have been the same for 4 years, can be considered as confusing nicknames, especially compared to No Sleep Gang 1, 2, 3 and 4, but from that point it was pretty much Park who chose our entire roster, so thanks a lot. Anyways, my expectations were met. The statistics never lie, so I prepared one specifically for you. Of course, this all counts if we still consider Bramnator to be a sub, because someone lacked brain cells to provide a roster size adjusted to the community needs. At the point when I'm making this video, we still have 2 matches remaining, but it is very likely we'll play all games with a sub, as long as our opponents will be more civilized than the organizers. Refusing providing a space on our roster for Bram would not even be that funny if not for the fact that right after Bram registered our team without himself, he was messaged by numerous team leaders, including Park, to join their team. One situation that was a bit disgusting to me was the match between Vice Tigers and the team called Love Kebab, whoever that is. From what I heard, it was played on very early hours, 3v3, and with a sub for the Czech team who joined the game without their best player. It seemed very odd to me, since Vice Tigers were available to scrim 4v4 practically every weekend, and yet their match occurred in such a weird time where they could only put 2 players from their actual roster. I can understand that VG team had possible difficulties caused by real life to play later, but I'm pretty sure it would be easy to find a time fitting both teams and make a 4v4 sized match. However, this is a perfect example how certain clan tags can provide you ultra strong New Order protection. People who have this protection and haven't been in the community during World Cup 2019 might not be able to see it, but the other side of the wall always will. I'm not gonna lie, I think I rather like Vice Tigers. They are relatively nice and rather don't cause problems or conflicts, which makes it even more sad how they could be treated in that particular game, cause I'm sure it was enforced. What makes it even more sad was the message from Igor summarizing the game, and it pretty much gives you the answer who was supposed to win the game. It is a natural thing that a tournament organizer likes some teams more than others. It has always been like that, and it always will be like that. However, favorizing a team featuring a guy who was capable of jetpacking with the cargo in the middle of competitive game is probably not right. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention how much we care about the rule of confusing nicknames. I wonder what would happen if, for example, Ave, Power Rangers or Rice Pants tried to do that. However, on the day when I'm making this video, I can say the tournament was not as terrible as I expected after looking at the rule set and organizers. However, that's mainly a contribution of the participants themselves. Low amount of forfeits, not too many dramas probably helped a lot. It's a good sign that the participants had significantly higher IQ than the organizers and probably made the competition a bit more enjoyable for each other. Anyways, I promised to provide a description of certain rules which absolutely shouldn't be there. The 3 golden rules that allow organizer to interfere into your match, your roster, and your team anytime he wishes to. In order to describe every single of them, I will use examples that already happened in previous New Order tournaments. Let's start with the power rankers, which is the worst invention of tournament. If you want to make it possible for tournament matches to be closer and more exciting for all participants, you can introduce several systems. It can be Swiss system known for ages, it can be introducing so-called small playoffs, which I added for the first time in World Cup 2020, it can be adding seedings based on previous tournaments, generally countless solutions. The first Power Rankers tournament I played in was BWS number 2. This was also a tournament where I was not allowed to register more than 6 people, even though I wanted. So was every other team. After our registration, I think it took several weeks before we could play against different opponent than Frühstück Club. And how did that happen? The competition started on the 25th of July. We played Frühstück Club on the 30th of August, which means it was played a month and 5 days after the tournament began. The match took place so late because we had to wait till the teams seated lower by the fucking power rankers can play each other. In the meantime, few players from our roster stopped playing the game, which was expected. It was even worse for some other teams, cause Archangels, for example, practically had no more active players due to a month of waiting for their first game and forfeited game against us, which is why we played Frühstück Club for the second time. This game took place a week later. Due to the genius power ranker system of tournament, the next game we had was against Archangels again, and it as well resulted in a forfeit. So far it looks awesome. After all those exciting games, we had to wait another month till we could play against the New Order management itself, the government, the founders, and the royal family in one, so-called QI. From this point, we can go to another rule which I wanted to discuss. Rule number 13, referring to organizers being the only ones to approve roster changes. Let's be honest, 6 people in a roster for tournament that lasts 3 months is a terrible idea. However, since it was there from the beginning, I assumed everyone will stick to it, especially team featuring 2 of the tournament organizers. During the competition, Starlito was banned from the New Order server, and here goes reference to the rule number 11. I am not familiar with the situation, but according to Johnny's statement that was published back then, Starlito was banned for using macro. This is what the official statement said. Of course, I trust New Order admins with my life, so once I saw Johnny publishing information about Starlito cheating, I was ready to report him from 10 accounts, block him, and burn his house. Of course, I'm kidding. I highly doubt Starlito was ever cheating in tournament game. That was just another sign of New Order's incompetence, but it is none of my business why Starlito was banned. The public information by the tournament organizer himself said that the reason was cheating. At this point, QI had to remove Starlito from the roster in order to adapt to the rule set. Fair removal, of course, we don't want cheaters in the competition. At this point, I assume Crusher Sky was no longer interested in playing with QI, so he most likely asked to be removed from the roster as well. From this moment, the QI roster was Johnny, Bilasino and Raven. This sounds like a good moment to use the privilege of tournament organizer to approve some roster changes. So here goes FC, considering final scores, twice better player than any of his teammates, and yet added to the roster without absolutely violating the rule that does not allow to strengthen roosters. I never make troubles with opponent roosters, but this situation turned out to be extremely odd, since for the final, the main tournament organizer decided not to come for the match, and even after improving the rooster, our opponents still required a sub. A sub that had to go after one game, so they had to take another sub, which Park tried to enforce, and this is where you guys can see why now organizers provided themselves a law to enforce specific subs, so good luck playing against Hody or Attia when QI, VG or Shin will be missing a player. Because the competition lasted 3 months for no reason, I sacrificed and turned on the game after 1 month of not playing Battlefront, and when being in the middle of fight with cyber identity thieves and Polish police. Anyways, that was a huge sacrifice from me, I'd say. And in the meanwhile, the main tournament organizer didn't come for the final of his own tournament. Playing against 3 subs in the final will be a normal situation in future, because this is what we are currently getting used to, which is unfortunate. Did you guys ever take a closer look at the rule about organizers judging fair subs and thought what would happen if you register to the tournament with roster featuring Spatty, Manphalanges and Nutcracker? Who would be the appropriate sub in this case? Hody, Rody, Attia? I honestly wanted to try it, but I am afraid that soon it will be personal opinion of the organizer who can participate in the tournament, so I will probably not be able to make my experiment. I would like you to take a look at some iconic tournaments that happened in the past. For example, Scorpia Trilogy. There were less teams, less players, and the community was less active, unlike some of you think. How did that happen? That the hype was alive for the whole tournament. One of the main reasons was that you could add player to your roster anytime, as long as he hasn't played for another team previously. So, when Scorpia tournament was being hosted, nobody hurried with the registration. Everyone was being calm, that if he will want to, and he will still have time to play, he can join the competition later, anytime he wishes. If tournament started on the 1st of August, and you don't know if you will have to travel abroad next week, you could wait a week to see. And if it turned out that your travel is cancelled, you could still join the tournament without any difficulties. This way, the roster inactivity problem didn't exist, and subs were being used only in extreme situations. Do you know why everyone wanted to play without subs? Because there was always a risk that your opponent will not allow any. Everyone preferred to have own players ready for the game in case shit happens. Now, if your best player is not available for the game, you can get another top player in exchange from the tournament organizer. Of course, if you're a member of QI, VG, Shin, NTR, Jedi, something like that. I did not make this video in order to put hate on incompetent tournament organizers, because, for example, I haven't talked to Fox through this tournament for a single time, so perhaps he did not fuck anything up, and I would have nothing against him having a chance to host on tournaments. I made this video to raise some awareness about the fact that soon the tournaments will be more and more sub-dominated, less and less exciting, and finally, and like it was promised in the New Order era, they will not be fair. You might hear idiotic statements that the 6-people roster prevents smurfing or something, but this is either a lie or a lack of knowledge, which is even worse. It's the exact opposite. Smurfing is still around whether you see it or not. If you try to explain yourself that smurfs are no longer existing, then you are just being naive. Smaller roosters only encourage smurfing, whether you like it or not. I was inspired to make this video after I saw certain suggestion coming from Zeri on the New Order server. World Cup is the only tournament of its kind. What makes it special is the fact that it takes place once a year. For 2 years in a row, it most likely was the best tournament of the year, and both times it really revived the community by bringing tons of new players. This suggestion might turn out very destructive for the community, and I'm actually scared that 30 people want to let World Cup be hosted by a group of incompetent people. You guys really don't know what you are doing, but if you don't believe me, take a look at downvotes and keep in mind that 90% of people voting against this terrible idea played in World Cup 2019, which was hosted by New Order. This tournament probably still holds a world record of the most forfeits in single tournament, and generally was an awful event. But if you don't believe me that World Cup 2019 was truly awful, then let me show you one simple statistic. We are in 2018. We have the famous Scorpia trilogy, each of the tourneys featuring 16 teams. Then Christmas Cargo Cup featuring 16 teams as well, which was the last Open 4v4 tournament before World Cup 2019. Here comes World Cup 2019 featuring 9 national teams and the infamous record of forfeits. After World Cup 2019, we have 2 tournaments featuring 7 teams, and Corona Cup with $100 of prize pool hosted during peak of lockdown, including 12 teams. Did you ever wonder how is that possible that the amount of teams dropped so much in just few months? There comes World Cup 2020, bringing very solid amount of new players. After World Cup, we have BWS number 2 featuring 16 teams, BWS 3 featuring 14 teams, and then Multi Elite tournament that was featuring 10 teams. Seems like the team numbers started decreasing again, even though there was this big kind of a boom after World Cup 20. The teams were slowly decreasing after the boom again. But here in the second week of December, the announcement of World Cup 2021 is revealed. Another huge amount of players is brought back to play competitively, so Ultimate Cargo League, that was announced a bit after World Cup, features 16 teams. Robzone 2v2 features 32 teams, and Robzone Masters features 20 teams, and all of it because World Cup 2021 was featuring 20 national teams. I'm not sharing my opinions, just stating pure facts here. You can see what were the impulses that helped to revive the community twice already. Unfortunately now you might make it way more difficult, because there is a reason why there is only, or there is supposed to be only, one tournament for nations each year. However, if you believe that hosting fake World Cup each month is an excellent idea, then don't bother my ass in 2022 again, as you already killed 50% of the hype we could possibly build for World Cup 2022. The reason I hosted World Cup 2021 in January was the fact that I didn't want incompetent people to host it before me. So looks like it was not enough effort. One more thing, do not fall to the illusion that it is for the good of the community. If New Order cared about the community, they'd execute that suggestion that had around 45 upvotes instead of this one. I'm sorry, but in this place, I'm not the one who puts politics above the good of everyone. So yeah, I just encourage you to sit for a moment, think about it, and don't make irresponsible decisions. Cheers!